Big Bets on Campus podcast, live show, the new BCS. Brett, Colin, Stuckey, and Tim is joining us again for his second week. We might have to come up with a new acronym. Let's go around the horn here. Tim, how you doing after last week's red bandana game with Florida State and Boston College?
I don't want to talk about it, Colin. It was a very entertaining game. At least we got that part of it. But yikes. I mean, it was, at least it was entertaining.
Hey, I'm there with you. All the red lights are on behind me in my room because it didn't go so well by taking Big Ten double-digit underdogs this past week, and they all got blown out. Stuck, how do you feel? Finally, after a month of play, you finally got your first real bad beat with that Ole Miss Georgia Tech game.
I also had Texas Tech, Oregon, so come on.
That's right.
I've had one Saturday night around 9:40 each of the past, I think maybe around 10:20 of each of the past two Saturday nights. I just get punched in the stomach. So at least I'm ready for it, and I can brace, and I'm used to it. So I'll have to look at the schedule to see what I end up having this Saturday night, and I will bring a shield.
You know what I love about our Saturday show is we have brought the worst beats in college football to that show on Saturday so far. Brett, no hesitation in Colorado State. You fired on it in Vegas, plus 10. Congrats. We took a lot of shit for the CLV on that. Yeah. And no problems firing on 23.5, 24. So how do you feel?
They should have won the game. I mean, I think everybody realizes that. You know, if I could give Jay Norvell truth serum, he'd probably admit he should have went for that fourth down.
Coward.
Even without doing that, he should have went for the 2-point conversion after the first touchdown. But as much
Coward.
as Stuckey is upset about that bad beat with Ole Miss, he got this, and I was also on his side too. The Iowa cover.
That's not a bad beat. That was my handicap.
No, I know, against Western Michigan. But get this. So I tweeted out after the game. So hilarious. Iowa scores, with less than 30 seconds to go, not only to cover the 28, but also to add 7 more points to the Brian Ferentz contract deal tracker. And I get an email from an Iowa fan saying, hey, you shouldn't have done that. That kid was a fifth string running back. This is his only time he'll ever score a touchdown. And then I actually got a text from an Iowa official saying, man, that was a bad look. You're doing this. And I responded. I said, well, then don't have a contract tied to how many points you score, because that's what's going to come out every time you guys score late. I understand you want to get some guys in that haven't played, but, come on, you can't have it both ways.
I learned and I live in the great state of Kentucky. No, there's no pro sports team here. So it's like life is Kentucky basketball. In Iowa, it's all about football, Iowa or Iowa State. And I said, how did Iowa State never win anything with Purdy and Breece Hall and their tight ends and that defense? And I learned all about Iowa State Twitter. And I had to be reminded 50 times that they won a Mickey Mouse New York Six Bowl in the COVID year. So I was attacked relentlessly. And then I had to mute your conversation because you were getting attacked relentlessly. So our numbers might be down in Iowa. Luckily, we got that covered, though, this weekend.
Well, the good news is we won't have to talk about Iowa and their points per game because they're facing Penn State this week. And if they get over 25, I'll be shocked. All right, let's move on. Shocked. I'll move on to our first segment. Gambling Heisman in terms of players, teams, and coaches. And I know that we do this at the end of the year, but I thought we'd take a temperature check after almost 1 month of play. Who do we want to crown the Gambling Heisman from a player, coach, and team situation? Stuckey, I'm going to throw it to you first because obviously we got to talk about Lane Kiffin, right?
Yeah. By the way, if you are watching on YouTube, hit subscribe, they really help us. If you want to mention who you think should be in the running for Gambling Heisman, let us know. Also, if you have a game or two that you have questions about and you want us to cover, let us know, as always, and I'll take that into consideration for the podcast later in the week. I'm gonna go unprecedented here. Can you imagine at the Heisman ceremony at the end of the year, they invite 3 quarterbacks and a coach? But I'm gonna say this is the Gambling Heisman. We make up our own rules. I'm gonna say as of right now, the leader in the clubhouse, and I still very, very long odds to win it at the end of the year, is Lane Kiffin. This man is out here doing everything in his power to cover games late instead of taking these, getting ready for the SEC play. Throwing bombs after bomb. Georgia Tech keeps coming in the window, and then they run it at the end instead of taking more knees. I think there was a handshake agreement. I don't know what was going on at the end. Was that is he like related to I had no idea. But Lane Kiffin, the last two covers as favorites. I was on the short end of the stick last week. Colin, you were on the short end of the stick the week before. So Lane has owned us. So I'm going to go unprecedented here and say a coach, Lane Kiffin, is right now the leader in the clubhouse for the Gambling Heisman Award.
Ole Miss 3-0 against the spread. Tim, do you have a player, a team, or a coach that has made you money you want to call out for Gambling Heisman?
Yeah,
DC,
this is
Castellanos.
No. This is way off the board. Calabrese and I, in our little player prop show, we are 11-3 on the season, and we went 4-1 last week. And part of that reason is because of Vanderbilt wide receiver Jaden McGowan. This guy has gone over his receiving total every single week. It's like you just set your clock to it. It's 5 or 6 receptions, 70 plus yards. This number's been in the 50s every single week. He's been my pick the last 2 weeks. I've bet him the third week as well. So, I mean, I'm sorry, guys. I know it's way off the board, but we make up our own rules here. Jaden McGowan, I might have to get a Jaden McGowan jersey.
By the way, speaking of bets, I just cashed this bet. And if you can't read it, it says Tim brings up his prop record minus 600. I laid it. Easy money.
Well, let's pivot over. So, Brett, we're gonna move over to you. I don't think you hit any player props this weekend, but do you have a coach or a player or a team that would serve as a Gambling Heisman moment so far?
It's funny that Tim went with the Vanderbilt when they're 0-4 ATS this year, but Whatever. I'm going with Oklahoma. Dylan Gabriel. The Sooners are covering their first 3 games by an average of 19 points a game. That's second only to Texas State. So I think right now, early on, I'll go as an Oklahoma State guy. As much as it pains me, got to go with Dylan Gabriel and the Sooners.
He got me against SMU by the hook on a late bomb. Got me by the hook, and yeah, I can certainly tell you it's not any of the 5 or 6 Oklahoma State quarterbacks that they've been using.
I have no clue how many quarterbacks are going to play in that game this weekend. I'm going to round us out on the Gambling Heisman, and I'm just going to say I would put Lane in there.
You want to go Slovis?
I should go Slovis after coming down and dominating in the South. No, I'm going to go with Texas State. Texas State's undefeated against the spread. No one has a better covering margin against the spread than G.J. Kinney and Texas State. They are 23.3 points above their 3 covers where the line closed. That is pretty impressive. And I finally found my Bobcats 80-1 ticket that I bought in Vegas. So I'm glad that I finally found that Sunbelt Futures. I can quietly tuck that away because it won't cash.
Well, you can't give. So you're going to give it you're going to say the front runner is Finley, TJ Finley, who has 6 touchdowns, no interceptions, 3-0 against.
I'm just going with team. I mean, we're talking about Gambling Heisman teams that you could bet on too, not just players, coaches, but teams.
Yeah, but a player's going to win it at the end of the year. If the season ended today, you would give it to Finley.
With covering by 23.3 points over the spread.
Yeah, I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm not disagreeing. I'm just saying that's okay. Yeah, let's shout out TJ Finley for his play so far. And yeah, that's some good names thrown out there. And we had a number of guys who have covered, and then Tim bringing up a guy from a team who hasn't covered yet this year, but that's okay.
We make the rules. We make the rules, and we make it up as we go. What do you guys just said it?
Gotta love Tim throwing some prop action in on us. Before props were existing, when all 3 of us started betting way before props were even a thing. So, Stuck, you tried to bet a prop a couple weeks ago. How'd it feel? It feels weird, doesn't it? Like to root just for someone to get a carry, to get a catch. Like, I don't do prop betting because, first off, it's hard to find the line. Second off, you're limited to like $250, $300.
Yeah,
like,
I should. I probably should try to. Like, the prop market is way more inefficient than the actual market, but obviously there's higher limits. And I just came up in the world where you don't bet. You just don't bet props. You would lose accounts, and we don't have to get into all that. But but it's different now. I think there's a little more. There's more liquidity. It's still, there's still limits in it, and because it's a less efficient market. But yeah, I always do it on the Thursday. I do it like the national title game, in the college football playoff. and it's fun. I like sweat it so much harder, and I take it to heart because I usually don't bet them. So like I've been betting for almost every day for 20 years. So I've seen every possible beat and what you can imagine with a side or a total. But when it comes to like a prop, I forget what I had. I lost. Jared Goff over touchdowns. I don't know. So Kerner hits every prop except if I tail it, it loses. Yeah, so no, it was fun. I obsessively sweat over, even if I have like way less money on it because I'm just not used to sweating them, and my brain just isn't used to that kind of sweat. So it's fun to do that every once in a while.
Well, I might have to sub out the overdog selection after that Alabama pick last week, and maybe we do prop on Thursdays instead. So we'll see. Let's float right into injuries. We got a whole bunch of updates that came through today. Stuck, you want to kick us off?
Yeah, one of the biggest, from a news perspective, before we get to injuries, Jaden Milroe will be back as the starting quarterback for Alabama this week against Ole Miss. And I imagine going forward, there might be some Alabama fans that have some countdowns out there for their 5-star freshman from, I think, Carlsbad, California, who's coming in next year. I'll be curious to see, I guess a lot will depend on how Milroe looks the rest of the year, but does Salen, I think his name is, I forget his name, Josiah Salen. He looks great. I think he's the number 1 or number 2 quarterback in the country. Does he start as a true freshman? Does Alabama go to the portal, get someone experienced? I don't know. It'll be interesting to watch in the offseason because obviously there shouldn't be any ties in football. This isn't soccer, and both ties weren't the answer. So you got to go with Milroe. You got to hope when you're stepping up in class that he can, make better reads than he did against Texas. But he gives you the best shot, and he gives you the highest ceiling. You got to lean on his legs. You got to lean on your run game, and you got to hope also your offensive line is better. So Saban going with Milroe after last week's disastrous quarterback performance against USF, a team that gave up 1 billion yards to Florida A&M. Shout out to the Rattlers the week before. Casey Thompson, FAU. I saw Brett report this earlier today. He's out for the year, the quarterback for Florida Atlantic. But, I saw Calabrese tweet like RIP or it might have been Iannello. RIP our FAU futures.
I don't feel that way. Do you?
It might not be. Daniel Richardson has a ton of experience. It was like a battle in camp. And, it's not like Casey Thompson was lighting the offense. He wasn't lighting up the scoreboard so far this season. So, yeah, but if Richardson goes down now, then it's over. Yeah. But Richardson has a ton of experience, and he had some really good years before last year when they just didn't have an offensive line.
43-13, the TD to INT ratio for Daniel Richardson. I think Florida Atlantic's fine.
Yeah, same. North Texas, for what it's worth, they put up a lot of points. Their defense is historically bad, but they went with Chandler Rogers over Stone Earl, which everyone thought they were going to do originally. It's probably who it's going to be moving forward. UNLV, Brumfeld should be good to go going forward, but Maeva played pretty well. Brumfeld got hurt in the first quarter against Vanderbilt, Tim's team. West Virginia, Garrett Green. Do you have any update there? I know that those are your boys.
Well, I read day to day. I thought he was going to be out for a while. Now I just read day to day a couple hours ago. So,
yep. There's a bunch of teams that I have no idea what's going. We'll talk more about it later in the week. I have no idea what's going on at quarterback. Arizona State could be down to their 4th string. Yeah. Jacob Conover. I might take them this weekend. I don't know. Plus 34. Like, does it matter who the quarterback is? They haven't gotten any quarterback.
That's not done steaming. That's not done steaming.
Yeah. I don't know if talk about buying low. ULM, no idea. They're down maybe to their 3rd string. ULL down to their 3rd string potentially in Zion Chris. Utah State, we'll see. They have a bunch of injuries. Bowling Green, they came out today and they have their MAC opener this week. And Loeffler, their head coach, said, I have no idea who's going to play quarterback this weekend. They were down to their 3rd string, and they had a bunch of injuries. He just came out and said, I have no idea who's going to play quarterback. Missouri, Cook got banged up a little bit, and he likes to run around, but he couldn't really run around much, which kind of forced him to throw. It actually worked out, but he definitely was hobbled. Penn State, Drew Aller kind of banged up his arm a little bit at the end of that game. So we'll see if he's limited from a throwing perspective. I can tell you that Iowa, we talked about this on the recap pod, but Kate McNamara is not right. Like he doesn't look fully healthy. You can see him grimacing. He like did a long scramble, then he was grimacing. And then when he's throwing, he just has like a mental block right now. He keeps double pumping, and he's just not anticipating receivers, and he's second guessing himself.
He's got the Chuck Knobloch yips or something because he can't even hit 6 yards in front of him.
Yeah, and that Penn State D is nasty. There's no one happier than Luke Altmaier that game ended. He was getting hit and throwing picks and looked like a deer in the headlights out there. Arkansas State, they have no idea their quarterback's going to be going forward. Akron back to Irons. Stanford, keep an eye there. East Carolina, they're going back and forth. Central Michigan, Bert Emanuel was out last week with an illness, so keep an eye out there. And then it looks like Jeff Traylor, who said he wants to quit football after losing to Army. He said, "You're damn right, Frank Harris will be back." So expect Frank Harris back under center. Those are just some of the.
But is he going to be mobile? Is he going to be mobile against a pissed off Tennessee? UTSA's defense is so bad.
That's the big question because so much of what Harris does, and they have other injuries. They have injuries on the offensive line. Corian Clark's been banged up, and so we'll see what happens there, and we'll see if Traylor doesn't quit football. But we'll get some more updates later in the week. But those are some of the ones that I wanted to mention. Anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, well, a couple others. Like I saw the Frank Harris day today, and you mentioned ULL down to their third string. Ben Woolridge is out for the entire season, so he won't be coming back. Blake Shapen at Baylor is going to remain out this week. And Jeff Sims, our beloved Nebraska quarterback, is practiced today. Practiced healthy is what the report said. So I guess we assume that he is going to be back going at it. Okay.
Oh, by the way, I guess one thing that we should also mention, probably one of the biggest one. Well, if you go to the Pac-12, UCLA, Chip Kelly said nothing is safe to say after being asked if Dante Moore's the starter at Utah. And then, so you have, okay, is it going to be Moore the whole time? Moore started. Schlee is the next man up as of right now. And they used, it was a blowout game. They used a bunch of quarterbacks. I think they used 5. But then they're playing Utah this weekend. And the question there is Cam Rising. Is he ready? Whittingham didn't get asked. Nate Johnson played every snap in week 3 after Bryson Barnes started the first 2 games, and Barnes looked horrendous. Brandon Rose is also out. So quarterback, we'll talk about that game later in the week, but Utah UCLA is definitely worth watching. And I think one other one is I should mention is Bachmeier for La Tech got knocked out of the game, and he is questionable moving forward. So we'll have some of those updates. Western Michigan, Ball State too later in the week, and Grant Wells questionable for Raw Tech. So there's a couple more Vandy that we'll talk about later in the week. But a lot of moving parts with the quarterbacks across the board. All right, I think it's what's it time for Tim's Whims?
It is. It's time for Tim's Whims. Tim, I think we need a pick from you. It's time. Let's get the segment going.
Let's do it. Stucky, real quick, though. Keep an eye on Jordan Travis. Obviously, he looked a little banged up there on that left side. Is he going to be full go? Any issues, practice? What do we think? Anyone have their finger on that?
Is that your excuse for your pick?
You guys are so mean.
I think Jordan Travis would have to be missing all 4 limbs to not play against Clemson. So,
I believe, by the way, no, I think that he's fine. At first, it looked kind of bad, but I think he's okay. But it will be something that I'll look into and we'll talk about when we break that game down later in the week. But it's definitely worth bringing up. I believe you lost your pick at the end, which when we all give a look at pick. But I believe Tim's Whims went 2-0. So Tim's Whims are off to a hot start. So let's see if you can keep it going. Do you have a couple? One? What do you got for today?
I will give 2 right here. The first one, Stucky, I expect this to come up in your situational spots, but let's look at Charlotte.
You better say Sam Houston.
No, let's go Charlotte.
Charlotte's fine.
Yeah, your other baby. Let's go Charlotte at Florida. They're catching 28 on BetMGM. Florida. Oh my God, they did it. Napier. Wow, finally. Big win in the swamp Saturday night in front of everybody. Well, now you got Charlotte coming in, and Florida goes to Kentucky Next week, I think it's a little bit of a sleepy spot here for Florida. Stucky, you can maybe fill in the blanks on Charlotte, but when I see 28 and a team in a nice little sandwich spot, play the thing, sandwich spot, Charlotte plus 28.
Yeah, I have this one circled there. We'll see. I got to figure out what Biff is actually doing at quarterback. Before the year, he said we could use 4 or 5 quarterbacks. Like Jalen Jones, he's more of the runner. I think he transferred from Bethune-Cookman. But then he got pulled, and they went with more of the passer last week. So I'm watching the quarterback situation there. I want to dig into, what worries me a bit is just if Florida comes in very vanilla here, as you would expect, they might be a little, flat. They might not want to show much. They might take their foot off the gas. But what does that mean? Like, they're just going to hand it off to their good backs? And, can Charlotte stop them, even if they're just out there sleepy? And so I'll have to dig into some of the trenches in the matchup there. But it's definitely a great spot, so don't mind it.
Yeah, I don't see it stopping the steam either, so I'll probably wait till later in the week to lock it up. I'm sure 28.5 will be there by the time we get to the end of the week.
Well,
Tim, what else you got?
Yeah, good thing I already grabbed it, guys, if it continues to steam, but it is what it is.
It can't be worse than last week. You grabbed the Florida State at minus 28, and then you could have gotten like 24. So
And Stucky, the hurricane didn't happen. It was, whole bunch of zero. My family went to the game. They were tailgating, so it ain't much of a hurricane. But
yeah, people who bet those unders up in the Northeast, right? And then had to watch it, they're like, wait, these games look completely fine. The FIU quarterback is throwing for up and down the field in a game the total came down like 10 points. So yeah, that's the risk. A lot of times these totals are all going to crash when there's weather. The market really gets out in front of them. But it's still Mother Nature. It's hard to project. Like sometimes the storm doesn't actually make landfall, and then you're stuck with a bad ticket.
Well, all right, Tim, you're up. You got number 2?
Yeah. Yep. Speaking of totals, let's do it real quick. South Carolina and Mississippi State. I have over 50.5 here. That South Carolina defense at the second half of that Georgia game, I felt like that defense was on the field for 4.5 hours. Even I was out of breath watching them. And you say, hey, you got, a week to recover, a week to get back, replenish. But South Carolina hasn't really stopped anyone all year. We obviously saw that North Carolina game in week 1, and then Mississippi State. They don't really stop anyone either. We saw what LSU did to them, 41 points. We saw what Arizona did to them, 31 points, 50.5. Just looked a little too low to me, so I played the over.
I disagree here, although I got to look into this tonight. It's on my It's on my to-do list. Is it Juice Wells? I assume he's out. Colin, do you know?
I don't know.
I assume he's out. Like he didn't come back in the game, and he looked.
Right.
Let's see. Here's Beamer just gave an update. I just Googled it. He's amazing, and we just saw what one of the other better receivers in the country did to Mississippi State. And they've had, let's see, I think it's week to week. He's seen a specialist this week. We'll know a lot more. He doesn't think it's going to be season ending, but I doubt he plays this week. So he would have been huge. Obviously, he's a great receiver, but we saw what Neighbors did. Neighbors in the first quarter had like 120 yards against Mississippi State, who's lost 2 corners in the first round of the NFL draft in each of the past 2 years. And I think that's caught up to them. So if Wells was out there, he's their best offensive weapon. He could have had a big game. So without him, I do worry if South Carolina could just carve up Mississippi State. I do think that their defense is in for maybe a rough year, but their offense is what really scares me. Mississippi State's offense has been horrible. If you look at like the success rate, efficiency metrics, obviously, including last week, it gets really lopsided, but it's a big transition there. They're going from the air raid where Rodgers was super comfortable to a more balanced attack. And I think there's going to be a lot of struggles there throughout the season. So, yeah, if you look, Mississippi State beat Arizona. They should have lost that game. They got like 4 or 5 turnovers, and they won in overtime. Arizona was short on a 4th down by a yard. So I don't mind the Charlotte one. I disagree here. With the Wells injury, the Mississippi State offensive struggles. Maybe South Carolina comes out a little flat after that like max effort, and then their offense is just off early. So I disagree here. Colin, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I make it 49.8, so I don't have anything numerically on this that would say, yes, we should do this, but I do have a trio of stats that say Tim is going to cash this. The first one is I cannot get over the fact that South Carolina's defense is dead last, 133rd in defensive havoc. They're not taking the ball from anyone, and they're not getting behind the line of scrimmage. Once you get past that, Mississippi State, 131st in defensive finishing drives. That means anytime South Carolina gets past the 40, they're probably going to get a touchdown. Mississippi State's also 131st in pass rush, which is really kind of, how their defense works, what Zach Arnett wants. And there are some extremely bad numbers here. South Carolina, 127th in havoc allowed. That can easily, this is the worst havoc team in the nation with South Carolina. They are terrible on offense and they don't do anything on defense. That can lead to easy scores for Mississippi State. So I think the last thing is South Carolina they're terrible at success rate, but they are so good at explosive passes. Mississippi State's defense is 126 in defending the explosive pass. So I think there's an avenue here. Even with Wells being out, I still think there's an avenue for quick, cheap scores in this game.
Right,
not a lot of moving the chains.
Semi endorsement for Tim's whims. The second one. All right, good stuff there, Tim. We will see if you have another one later in the show when we give our look ahead bets. Where are we going next, Colin?
Well, I think we got to check out with Brett. He could have made himself a sandwich. No, I'm sorry. We're gonna do Sources Stumper.
Oh yeah.
Let's go ahead and do that, and then we'll do Thursday Night Football. So, Brett, the floor is yours for this week's Sources Stumper.
All right, guys, here we go. Sources Stumper, America's favorite game show. This week's question: only 4 players have won the Heisman Trophy, a college football national championship, and a Super Bowl. My buddy Todd Wright gave me this question. So can you name the players? Stuckey, you're up first. Just guess one at a time.
Charles Woodson, I think, is one.
You are correct. That is one of them. Charles Woodson at Michigan, 97 national champ, and won the Super Bowl after the 2010 season with the Packers. Colin, you're up.
Well, he was all over TV in week 2, so I'm going to roll with Joe Namath.
That is not correct.
Joe didn't win the Heisman.
I'm going to say Marcus Allen.
Wow, 2 for 2.
Raiders and USC.
Raiders and USC. He was a backup on the 78 national championship team with USC, and then won the Heisman in 81, and then won a national title, then won the Super Bowl with the Raiders.
Oh, I'm drawing blanks here, so I'll go Joe Montana. I don't know why I'm going back so far. Namath and Montana.
No,
and I got another.
Good guess, but no, not Joe Montana. Stuck? You going to sweep the board?
I almost went Mark Ingram.
It's not Mark Ingram.
Tony Dorsett.
Stuck.
That's a good one.
You got 3 of them. Pitt, he's the only person that's won a national championship and the Heisman, and then won a Super Bowl in his rookie season with America's team, the Dallas Cowboys. One to go. This of the 3 answers we have so far: Tony Dorsett, Marcus Allen, and Charles Woodson. This guy played after all of those guys, so he is more recent.
What?
Colin, you got a guess?
I don't. Reggie Bush would be my guess, but
that is correct.
Oh shit!
Wow.
He won a Super Bowl with the Saints in 2009.
That's right.
Oh yeah.
He won the national title in 2004. He won the Heisman the next year in 2005. Him and Leinart were teammates.
Aren't some of those vacated though?
Yeah, well, he won it. It counts. So it's Stuck. You now are on. You lead Sources Stumper 4-2.
That was a good one. I totally forgot Bush was on that Saints team.
Well, the fact that there's no quarterbacks on the list made it impossible.
So here's another little tidbit. So there are actually 2 guys that are real close to pulling off the trifecta. Devontae Smith, and Joe Burrow.
Yeah.
Of course, they did not win a Super Bowl.
Bengals ain't never win the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Signed a Ravens fan.
All right,
good stuff.
Everybody.
That's a fun one.
Let's get into Thursday Night Football because Stuck and I do our podcast on Thursday. We won't be able to get a preview in. Georgia State, Coastal Carolina, going to go at it on Thursday night. We're finally going to get into some Sun Belt action here. We're looking at a point spread on the board here, about 6.5, 7. Total sitting at 62.5. Stuck. You got anything comes to mind here? Georgia State, Coastal Carolina?
I would expect lots of points in this game. I don't know how either team stops the other, so I would imagine this number probably goes up. It's super high total. What's it sitting at? 62 and a half. Mm-hmm. I think I make it 65-ish. So I lean over here. Georgia State's offense, look, their defense has major issues, mainly in the secondary. They lost 2 of their better secondary players, and we saw what happened when they played Rhode Island. They gave up 400 yards passing. Now they're going up against the best quarterback they faced this year. And I like some of the things that I've seen from the Georgia State offense, who's gone for 42, 35, and 41 in their first 3 games. So I imagine this total will tick up a bit. Maybe you'll have a group that releases the under eventually and it comes down. But first thought is the over, and I think the spread has come down. I made it around a touchdown, but it looks like Georgia State might be taking some money. Those are my early thoughts. Is that both offenses should have a day.
Yeah, there's a big difference here in strength of schedule. Georgia State's 130th, Coastal Carolina 49th, getting helped out by going cross country out to UCLA. So there definitely is, from a resume perspective, that's in favor of Coastal Carolina. And that brings me to the fact that Georgia State's 111th in tackling. Coastal Carolina is 7th in tackling. They're also 9th in defensive finishing drive. So there's a lot more that has me wanting to back Coastal Carolina here. I haven't put any money down on it, but if I did right now, I'd put it on Coastal Carolina minus 6.5. They're also 11th in offensive quality drives. They had no problems going up and down the field against UCLA's defense, even with some of their great edge rushers that can get pressure on Grayson McCall. But Georgia State has been terrible in coverage, 121st. Like I said, they can't tackle. They can't defend the pass. They're not generating any havoc. The one thing that Georgia State can do really well is rush explosives, and Coastal struggles with that big time. So Georgia State's going to get their shots in, but I just trust Coastal from a ball protection, quality drives, points up on the board, and keeping points from getting on the board. I favor Coastal here. Tim, you like either of these? Go ahead.
I was just going to say under 7, if it keeps coming down, I would lean that way as well. I see advantages just from a matchup perspective for both offenses. Like you mentioned, defending rush explosive, which you need to do against Granger and Carroll. And then, this Georgia State secondary, I think it's going to be a rough year. They lost their 2 best, like I mentioned, in Lane and White. And, they haven't really played anybody yet. They played Rhode Island in the opener, who threw for 400. And then they played UConn, who lost their starting quarterback. And then you had Tyquan Robinson come in, and he couldn't do anything. He still threw for 200, but we saw him last week against FIU. Mess, right? So the UConn passing offense right now with their backup quarterback is a mess. Then they played Charlotte, who can't really throw the ball. This isn't a prolific offense. And their backup, Trexler Ivy, great name, came in and went 20 of 28 for 260, averaging almost 10 yards a pass. Now, I know that the game state favored that, but these aren't prolific quarterbacks that they're facing. And now you're going up against Grayson McCall. It could be a long day for the secondary. Tim, you have any thoughts here? It's okay if you don't.
Bet the over, turn on the TV, have the computer open, because when you have a total like this, there could be tons of live opportunities as well. No team, I think, is ever down and out of a game like this. Colin, you always talk about having all the tabs open for the live betting. So that will be me as well on a Thursday night primer for a great weekend in college football.
Yes, 6 ranked games, six matchups of ranked teams, most in over 15 years.
Yeah, this is going to be a monster weekend. So it gets kicked off with Georgia State and Coastal. Also on Thursday night, Arkansas Pine Bluff, Alabama A&M. For you FCS folks out there, we do have power ratings up at the Action Network now. On a neutral site, that'd be about a 7.5 point game in favor of Alabama A&M. So with them being at home, I would expect that to be around 9 to 10 if you guys are out there shopping for lines for FCS later this week. All right, to go ahead and close us up for the show, let's do picks of the week. Brett, I'm going to kick it off to you. Let's let you start first. You got a pick for us for this weekend?
By the way, Brett, trivia question for you. Arkansas Pine Bluff, do you know their mascot?
The Mountaineers. No.
Close. It's the Golden Line.
Oh, yeah. Nice. Okay.
Stuggy razzed me on a podcast because I called them the Zebras because the Pine Bluff High School is the Zebras. I played there. It was rough, but no. Golden Lions. You go from a zebra to a golden lion. Okay,
I do know Arkansas Pine Bluff is hyphenated, but that's as much as I know. Look, you asked me to go first. Sure, I'll go first. Because why? Well, because I told you Navy plus 14 last week against Memphis. That came in very easily. Navy should have won. I'm going to Oregon. No surprise. This number started at 16, 17. Now it's up to 21. I don't care. By the way, Colorado has one of the worst running offenses in the country. They have one of the worst defenses in the country. And now they face an Oregon team that Dan Lanning ripped Colorado when they left for the Big 12. Ironically, Oregon later left to the Big 10, but that's another story. You guys have noticed all these Bo Nix billboards all over the country? Well, guess what? He's on a national TV game. Like Stuck said, 6 monster-ranked games. He will want to stand out. Oregon's at Stanford next week. There's no look ahead. Oregon puts the pedal down. My condolences again to the Duck. My God, his arms are going to be like twice the size they were before the start of the season. Oregon is going to score early and often, and I do not see them letting up. I don't see how Colorado is going to generate much offense. Oregon's not going to, filter this away like Colorado State did. Quack, quack, lay it with the Ducks, and they will roll the Buffaloes.
Yeah, I actually saw, I agree there. I saw sub 21 or better. I saw someone bring this up on Twitter, and I thought it was a really great point. Deion is creating this awesome spectacle, and I think it's great for the sport. But maybe next year he might take a different approach and I think it's good this year. You want to build up the hype, but every week is such an event, right? Like it's such an outpouring. And they played, a close game, then they played Nebraska. It was a close game. GCU, well, Nebraska they kind of blew up, but these are it was a close spread. Every week they've had it's all out emotion. We got to get up for this, and it's like us against the world. It's that's exhausting.
Yeah, they got nothing left in the tank. I agree. Steve.
Yeah, and then Oregon has gone out and playing they're putting up 80 on Little Sisters of the Poor. Colorado's they have injuries already, and their offensive line is a mess, and their defense is just going to get shredded to pieces here. So yeah, I agree there. I'll talk one later in the week, but let me just get mine over with. Sam Houston, baby. Sam Houston, eat 'em up, Cats. We are back. Anything double digits is fine. There's something bad going on with Houston. Holgerson's quotes after all these games, 2 weeks ago against Rice, we weren't prepared. Last week, I thought we had a good game plan. I'm not sure what happened. There's a good chance that this team is doesn't show up this week. Hopefully, Casey Keeler in the 2 weeks that Sam Houston State has had to prepare for this game has come up with something on offense. Can Grant Cannell get on the field? Can they score? And can they score one touchdown for me?
You don't need them to score. You've already won. You already cashing tickets, and they don't score any points.
That's true. Maybe we'll get 6 points, maybe 2 field goals this week. But eat 'em up, Cats. Talk about it more later in the week.
All right, before we get to Tim, I'll go ahead and go. I'm going to do Wyoming and App State over. Got in the app today, got some money down. I see that's going up. I'd still take it 44.5, 45. Let it go. I make it 51. Some serious advantages for offenses running the ball here. Did anybody know that App State's almost dead last in stopping the run, 132nd in line yards? Both offenses have big quality drives, big finishing drives advantages here. The App State defense has not been good whatsoever in stopping anybody. Plus, App State is running pretty fast. I don't know what's getting into this team offensively, but they're now 25 seconds per play. And plus Wyoming, Peasley says day to day, I read that he's going to play. So for me, I mean, this Wyoming team is all of a sudden scoring points, and it's not a fluke. They're 12th in strength of schedule. They're 27th in strength of record. I think there's more points here than we expected with Wyoming, which makes me pretty happy as a guy that ran around all Vegas looking for Wyoming futures for the Mountain West. So I'm going to take the over there on that game. Let's wrap it up with Tim. Tim, what do you got for us?
Wait, by the way, Colin, did you learn last week? Brett told you last week Navy against Memphis. I told you the week before Sam Houston against, of course, Eat 'em Up Cats against Air Force. Are you done taking teams laying 14 against service academies? Yes or no? And are you gonna bet Army Navy over? I don't know. We'll talk about that later.
I am betting Army Navy over. Let's just get out of the way. I'm betting Army Navy over. I'm doing it again.
He'll never learn, Brett.
All right, Tim, what you got for us? Last one, pick of the week.
Colin, sorry, I got to go run to BetMGM to go bet that over. What a disparity. You tell me you have it up to 51. I can't wait to hop off and go grab that. So I'll tell you this. Brett, you've been on the story since the jump. Michigan State. I'm laying Maryland -7.5 on BetMGM against Michigan State. I have no reason to believe Michigan State can put up any sort of a fight, any reason to keep this close. I love my Terps. I had them last week. I'll be on them again. There's no sort of sandwich spot or anything. The Terps got Indiana next week. Laying it 7.5 Maryland.
I have no clue.
Tim, go. Sorry.
I have no clue what that steam was against Maryland last week. I mean, everybody kept asking me, why is it going the other way from where I was like, I don't know. This shouldn't be. So, yeah, let's go. Michigan State was lifeless.
Yeah, that was embarrassing performance by Michigan State. By the way, Tim, you went the entire show. I know you're repping, but you didn't mention Clemson once against Florida State. Does that mean you're scared, or is this quiet confidence? Do you have any...
We're not letting you go without a bet on Clemson, Florida State.
Do you have 15-second thoughts? Are you going to win this weekend or what? Are you going to shake up the College World Playoff, or is Dabo going to be running scared out of the tunnel?
I am absolutely terrified. I do this all the time. I always bet against my teams, so I will be betting a ton on Florida State. I say to myself, what amount of money
would I... Oh, God, he's betting Florida State again. We got to get out of that Clemson.
I hope. I always say to myself, what amount of money...
This is a Clemson podcast, as I've always said. This is a Clemson podcast now.
What amount of money would I pay to see my team win? So that's what I do all the time. I always fade my teams. I'll be on Florida State. Go Tigers. I would love to lose some money on Saturday afternoon.
Considering the
amount of... place to stop. Tim, 2 weeks in a row, closing out the podcast with Florida State endorsement.
Considering the amount of autographed Bowman Chrome Cade Klubnik cards I have in this house, I would happily take a little win here from Clemson because they aren't looking too good right now.
Nope.
All right, that's going to wrap it up for the new BCS. For Brett, myself, Colin, Stuckey, and Tim, I'm going to say peace out.
Group of 5 Wednesday, Colin and I back Thursday night. Can't wait.
Check out the Group of 5 podcast, and then Stuckey and I will be on Thursday night for the BBOC podcast. And Brett and Stuckey and I will see you guys on Saturday morning for Week 4 picks.